right, thank you very much indeed, Nick, for the intro. Just to give you sort of a taste of what we're going to be covering off this afternoon. Whether you're commissioning, creating, or distributing video content, it's becoming increasingly important to measure its performance. And what we're talking about here is actually how we can catapult this forwards. So we're actually measuring video performance when it's out there in the wild, going beyond views. So let's look at, first of all, the big picture. On the left-hand side is a representation, really, of what's really happening in the vast majority of cases today. What we have is video content up on the left-hand side here. So that might be a video I've put onto YouTube or my favorite social media channel. Video content is measured in likes, shares, comments, very, very commonplace stuff. That's great, but it goes only so far. On the right-hand side, then, we've got the evolved thinking, and this is really where Wootag is taking things in terms of saying, take that same great video content that you've produced or that you've commissioned, and by making it interactive, you're actually then able to then get so much more of a rich level of engagement with your viewers out of it. So in this case, not only are you able to report on exactly the same stuff, so you're getting your views, your shares, your likes, your comments, that's all fantastic, but now we're taking it further. So we're now able to then see how viewers are actually engaging with that video content. So specifically, we're talking about how they're interacting with it, how they're engaging it. What's really cool about this, though, as Nick so very kindly referred to, is actually the retail component, or rather the ability now, as we have, to actually enable viewers to purchase a product and or service from directly within the video without actually leaving the video itself. So you're actually creating a really rich, integrated experience. And of course, you can measure it. I'll be talking about data. Anybody like data here by any chance? Great, more than one. The last bit of this is actually then the ability to then take all that information, and there is a massive information that's really valuable that you can then take out of this and then use that to actually measure a true return on investment. Now, something that's thrown around so many of these sorts of presentations like so much confetti is the concept of ROI. Many, many people are talking about this. This enables real-time return on investment measurement. Pretty neat stuff. So, why do you want to do this? Views, shares, and likes do not equal engagement. As I said before, it's a top-line thing. It's great. I'd be delighted to know that 10 million views were achieved on my latest video, but how much money did I make? And to Nick's point as well, if I am the downtrodden finance director having his marketing director running up and saying, hey, I need another whopping great budget to produce another fantastic video, my first question is going to be, okay, how much money did we make off that last series of videos that we had? So how are we going about doing this? Enable viewers to interact with your content by putting in calls to action. This is where platforms such as Wootag really have an edge. So we're actually taking a video and actually then introducing the ability for the viewer to not just simply watch that video, but to actually then touch that video. And then critically, from a human point of view, we're actually then saying, convert those views into taps and touches and see how they interact then with it to learn how and what they truly like. What we're then able to do is take these learnings and to start reapplying them to then make even greater or more powerful video content in the future, rather than assuming that perhaps one size fits all or other. And then critically, as I said before, funnel that interest into some form of conversion. So what do I mean by conversion and calls to action? Here's some examples. So we've got brand messaging. So I could be advertising a car, let's say. One of the things might be that in that typical car commercial, if you've all seen them, is that I might be interested in knowing more about that vehicle. Now, I might not necessarily want to go to the website or go to see a dealer just yet because I'm sat on the couch and it's Saturday evening. What I can do, however, is to actually make the car interactive, so therefore a viewer can actually tap that vehicle within the video and see all of the information about that car that they may wish to then know about. And then if they then wish to then step through to the website, they can. Similarly, if I then want to know perhaps where I can go to the nearest retail outlet to then see where to go and test drive that vehicle, I can do that. Lead generation, we're now getting into the sort of the more data capture element. So here, what I can do is actually then capture information that is relevant in the context of the brand to then enable that onward marketing communication to then kick off. Now, that information could be, for example, and in the context of that car commercial, that it's not been launched yet, so I can be kept informed of it and then enable the onward marketing activity to then kick off as soon as that's ready. I can, of course, capture feedback. So it might be, I mean, we did a recent exercise with one of the film trailers for Universal Pictures where you're actually able to then capture straight top-line information like who's your favorite actor in this upcoming movie, and then capture that from within the video. That's it. Events, another great example. So it could be advertising a music festival. I can then sell tickets from directly within that video. So I've captured people's interest by watching the music. I can then convert that. So therefore, this builds up to then the most critical element here and the coolest part of this, the ability then to transact from directly within a video. Who can benefit from this? Absolutely anyone. So it could be any size of business in any market. So this could be a startup business, someone selling shoes, for example. It could be a multinational conglomerate, for that matter. It could be in private or public sector. So you, for example, governmental departments trying to promote new aspects to the services that they offer their public. Education is a great area. So if you imagine a university that shot a beautiful video of a latest faculty that it's just opened, and by tapping directly from within the video, that viewer can commence the sign-up process to enroll as a student at that university. Not-for-profit is another interesting area. Again, we've seen some very emotive examples of video content today, and of course, not-for-profit and charities are one of the most emotive examples, but the ability then, as is their requirement, to then convert that interest then into examples of where people can then donate to said charities, of course, a prime example. Music and entertainment, we've seen some cracking examples of that today, and here's a great thing, to be able to buy or download from directly within the video, a piece of video content or a music or track. And then, of course, as I said, anyone. It could be someone looking to sell something on an online marketplace and who wants to promote that using a very short video, but wants to be able to give their viewers a piece of engagement to say, hey, here's a good example of what, you know, some of the information that I couldn't actually otherwise have told you otherwise, or to save you the effort of actually phoning me. Here's all the information you need. Click now to buy. You can, of course, now like random things, be an international, or intergalactic, should I say, bad guy such as my mate Kylo Ren here, who's trying to enlist stormtroopers for the next Star Wars movie. We'll see more of him later anyway. All right. So let's take a quick look at the process here before we then show you some actual live examples of this. You've produced a great piece of video content, or you've got existing video content you might want to repurpose. And I know this has been a point that's been covered on a couple of times today. You then make that interactive, and I'll show you again examples of that in a second. And by doing so, can then play that back across any of the channels that you then distribute your video content. So that could be across your owned, earned, or paid media channels. Data we're going to cover off later, but certainly there's lots of really fascinating and relevant information that you can then capture to then enable even more optimization around your own marketing activity. And the optimization bit is critical here. So, who's familiar with Zalora? No one. Anyone? Show of hands. Okay, great. So, online retailers. The example that you see on the left there of the actual video has been tagged using Wootag's own technology. And what this means is that each of the items that's featured within that video is now interactive. I can then tap on an item that I like. I can then see more information, as you see here at the bottom. I can then select the size, color, and then purchase that directly from within the video. Now, at this stage, or in this particular example of the campaign, that clicked directly through to their own website. But what it had also done was to actually add that item into the shopping cart. What was really powerful about this campaign, because we were looking at how people were converting from watching the video to actually then interacting with that video, is that 10% of all of the people that watched the video went on to put something into their shopping cart. Let's take a look at it. So you'll notice along the timeline at the bottom here, the little dots. And by then interacting with that video at that point, the model, who is a a well-known vlogger in Indonesia, was wearing the dress that you see here. So by clicking on that dress at that point in time, I can then view more information about that dress, select the size, as I mentioned before, and the color, and then purchase that item from directly within the video. Now that could be distributed wherever I want it to go, and I get the same experience, whether it's on a mobile device, desktop, wherever. Another great example, Qantas. We've been seeing a couple of airline logos this afternoon. These guys produce some beautiful video content. So that I can then tap that video, see all the information I need to know that is relative to where I am and what travel packages are available to me, and I can then directly book my holiday from within the video. Astounding results were achieved by that, by the way, and Qantas are now rolling this out across the organization. Here's my mate Kylo again. Thinking about when you're actually doing this type of thing, about the experience that you want to offer people across all the ways in which they want to view your content is really, really important. So again, creating that consistency of experience. At the back end, of course, once we've actually watched all this stuff, as a brand or as the agency that's actually assisting and working with that brand, I can then get a much more clearer idea of how that video is performing. So I can then, for example, compare video performance on a specific time frame. So I can see, for example, how people are interacting with it on, say, a weekend as opposed to a weekday, morning or night. How they've spent that time on the video. So how are they actually interacting with that video? Which calls to actions are they clicking on that I can then say, you know what, we're nailing this one, and actually we're getting drop-offs here, let's make a change. We had an example recently with Coca-Cola where they'd put a call to action right at the very end of a video, which was to say, sign up to this and share this video. Because it was right at the end of the video, they were getting a lot of people not actually getting to that stage in watching the video, so they made a change to this idea of optimizing it to then bring that very much forward into the video, so it made a huge difference in terms of the number of people then sharing that video, because they could see the call to action very early on. And then, of course, we're then gathering information about the people viewing it in terms of where they're located, what perhaps their playback medium is as well. This is all valuable information to drive back into the marketing machine. And yep, there's more. There's a hell of a lot of stuff you can see there, and you'll have a copy of this deck after this, but there's heaps of stuff that you can capture. And as I've mentioned, just touching on a couple of these, the leads generated, performance time. What we do know is that people who are spending time watching an interactive video spend a lot more time on the video, but they also spend more time, they click through more. And in fact, for those of you who are using click-through rates as a metric to measure performance, the average on any video that Wootag has ever tagged is over 21% click-through rate. That's on any video. Some cases, substantially higher. So how will this give you an edge? First of all, think about the customer experience. In this age where we've got tools such as Wootag available to actually enable this interactivity, think about how you can integrate that into your video experience. So therefore, I have perhaps a product or a service that I wish to have a large viewing base consume and take up. How do I make it as effortless as possible for them to then touch that video, interact with the brand in the way that I want them to, and in the way, critically, that they do as well, so that therefore I can then begin that conversion process. I'm more likely to have people who are then going to be more engaged with the brands, and so therefore a higher chance of keeping them. And also, interestingly, talking of advocacy, the ability to then share that content as well across all of their favorite social channels as well. Data we've touched on, I don't think we need to do much more right now. But then lastly, thinking about then what you can learn through this process to then optimize what you do, and then how you can then apply that and be even more successful. So some things to perhaps think about. What are the objectives? And what I talk about here is, from a content owner's perspective, what are they trying to achieve? Is it traffic to the website? Are they trying to get shares? Are they trying to get people to sign up? Do they have an app they want someone to download? Do they want to make money? Most importantly, however, the viewer. What are they trying to achieve? There's some fabulous content we see out there and some fantastic opportunities to activate that interest. Don't allow someone to get to the end of a beautiful piece of video content to then say, click now www. or type this into your web browser. Why not give them the opportunity to one click within that video and make that all happen? And if it is a product that could be purchased online, enable that as well. How relevant can you make those calls to action as well? I touched on not-for-profit and charities earlier on. We had recently an example of one brand that had a very emotive, beautiful video. However, they wanted to have people sample. This is a consumer goods company, by the way. They wanted them to sample their product. So, of course, they're tugging at the heartstrings, which is one thing, and then saying, hang on, Philip, give us all your information, and we want to get you to buy something. Not ideal. But anyway, so think about that. And also, how will you measure that performance as well? If you've got the ability to be able to go back to that theoretical finance director and say, you know what, you gave me X, I've made that X times 10 in terms of return, you're going to get a lot stronger response when you then want to get more budget next time around. Think about then how you can then apply those learnings as well in terms of heightening viewers' experience and how they consume your brand. As I mentioned before, this is universal in terms of its application. So it could be the individual who's trying to sell something on an online marketplace, right the way through to perhaps one of the airline brands we've seen today, retail, telecommunications. The list is absolutely endless. So by applying those learnings, what you're then able to do is to then consider how you can then go beyond views. Thank you very much indeed.